Ben ritrovati, ben ritrovati. Iniziamo ora la nostra programmazione del pomeriggio. Anche questo panel sarà in inglese, quindi se vi dovesse servire la traduzione simultanea potete prendere le cuffiette all'ingresso della sala. And we switch to English to talk about data system, and we move to Saudi. So we're talking now about Saudi Pro League. In the heart of Saudi football digital revolution, QIMA is building a central data system that promises to transform the Saudi Pro League. Integrated data, precise analysis, and transparency are becoming the cornerstone of a more efficient and strategic league management. I welcome on the stage, yes, Buster Madsen, Director of Football and Data Science of Saudi Pro League. Thank you for being here.
Of course.
The stage is yours.
Hello, everyone. So it's an honor to be here. My name is Buster Madsen. I'm currently the Director of Football and Data Science in the Saudi Pro League. I joined Saudi Pro League 1 year ago. So what you'll see now is what we worked hard on for the last year. So first of all, who am I? I have kind of a weird background, given that I'm in football. I actually started out as a neuroscientist when I was younger, working at Bispebjerg Hospital and University of Arizona. I studied Alzheimer's, I studied chronic pain. I was then a lecturer in neuroplasticity and methods of neuroscience. And then Corona happened, as you all know, and through strange pathways, I ended up at FC Copenhagen, which is also my home city, Copenhagen, and it's a club that I love. So I was very happy to join the club, and I worked there for 3.5 years. And in there, we developed many different things: cognitive neuroscience within football, data systems, training methodology, and other things. And so 1 year ago, I was then offered the opportunity to join the Saudi Pro League, which I've done. So first of all, you know, when I arrived at the Saudi Pro League, it's a league that's undergoing tremendous change, as you all know. And we needed to find a way to get the data that we were actually getting from the league and unify it in a platform and give it back to the clubs, okay? And how do you do that? Well, I'm gonna try to show you guys how we did that, how we solved that issue. Because today, if you go to the Premier League, the Serie A, other leagues, all clubs have their own data systems. Or at least they have some kind of data system, but I'm sure all the clubs are fighting with tons of different platforms, tons of different data sources, changing data sources, no real clear data strategy. And so we wanted to go about this, and since we now had the opportunity, we would create a centralized data system, build it for the clubs, and then give it back to the clubs. So they actually had one data system where all the data that they need is within that platform. But of course, that has some issues. So first of all, let's just see where the league is now. As you all know, there's been invested a lot in football players. And so what we have is Sadio Mane out there. Of course, you know, a great winger. Ronaldo, who's, you know, the Saudi Pro League guy that everyone loves. And he's actually doing tremendously well in the league, as you can see. And he's scoring amazing goals, and he's a very important figure in the league in creating standards and creating expectations to performance, not only to the club, but also to the other players. So our job is to give that same kind of standards and level to the league, but on a staff level, right? And that comes through data. So the first thing that we went out and procured was Spotlight. Spotlight is a tracking system that you also have in the Premier League. We use it for match tracking, and it's a very precise and very good system for tracking speed, distance, acceleration, deacceleration, work rate, and so forth. So that's one of our data sources, and we have it installed in all stadiums. Then, of course, we have Then, of course, we have Opta, which you all know is event data. It captures passes, shots, tackles, all of these things. And Opta is a very important collaborator with us in building this central data system. And then we have Catapult. So this is probably slightly different in that we're actually collecting all training sessions from all clubs in the league. Since we are providing this technology and this solution, we are then also receiving the data and actually analyzing it. So that leaves us with 3 valuable data sources, which is match tracking, physical, match tracking, event data, and training data. So what we then said is that, so I'll just come back to that. So what we then said is, let's put it all in one platform, right? So the clubs don't have to go out and buy all these different things. Let's put it all in one platform, but that of course has issues. So first of all, as you know, football data is highly complex. If football data was so easy, I'm sure we would have models today that would just predict any game, but of course we can't do that. One of the main issues is the contextual nature of data. So, you know, I actually studied a bachelor in philosophy, and in philosophy back in the days, we had this issue called the framework problem. And that's a problem within mathematics and philosophy, is that to analyze a situation, you need to define your frame. But in football, how do we define what the frame is of analysis, right? Because Jesper from Copenhagen down here might say, oh, this is a phase 1 in the build-up. Other people might use different ways of talking about data. So you constantly actually have a philosophical discussion about what is the current context of the data. So the objective parameters of understanding the game is not something that we agree on. The other thing you could talk about, for example, high pressure. You know, high pressure, can that be with anywhere on the pitch? Is it defined by the pitch? Is it defined by the structure of the team? There's so many complexities when you analyze data. Also, we know there's high variance, there's high randomness in football. That's where handball, which was invented in Denmark, is a lot easier, because in handball you have 60 goals per match, so the randomness is a lot lower. In football, you have, you know, about 2.5 goals per match, so randomness has a very, very big effect on the outcome of games. And then lastly, you know, every player is not independent per se. As a baseball player hitting a bat, a right back is depending on all others within the team and his opponent, which makes data even more complex. So what was then the vision of QIMA? So the idea is basically to collect all data from all professional clubs on Opta, Spotlight, Catapult, and maybe in time also other types of data sources. It could be Whoop, you know, sleep analysis. It could be financial information. And what we then do is we take the responsibility of building the platform away from the clubs. We then build it in-house, and we then implement it in the clubs, which was done here at the 1st of August. So for the league, this supports us in setting the standards, educating the staff, and establishing benchmarks. So what I think is really, really important with data nowadays is that, and we all know, we hear AI all the time, right? AI, AI, AI. And possibly we could create a platform that would just pre-analyze anything within the black box of AI. We don't want to do that. We want to give the staff the ability to look at the data in a complex way and learn how to analyze it. Okay, so that was our way of approaching that. So the principles were that we need high resolution. So you need the highest granularity of data when it's shown to staff, players, team, and others. We need perspective, meaning that we can analyze this across temporal spaces. That could be days, weeks, months, years, seasons, so we can see trends. So for example, if you look at Catapult data, you might want to look, how did this last week go, or how did the last 20 weeks go, or how did the last month go? You need to be able to do that. That is very important in order to understand the data you're shown. Then we have context. So for us, in some way, football data, you could say there's an absolute, in some ways, Catapult data is absolute and objective, sure. But it's the context that really defines how you analyze it, right? So if we go in and look at Spotlight data, distance run, and we then say, okay, I want to look at the last month for all strikers in the league, then we use the context and say, we now compare these players to all strikers, or all left-footed strikers, or all 27-year-old left-footed strikers that played in this specific formation. So we spend a lot of time creating the necessary context within the data. Because this allows us to educate the staff in the league. If you just give them an AI model, say, this is your lineup, Ronaldo is there, Kingsley Coman is there, Mane is there, then we're not educating the Saudi staff and the people that come to the country. So that is a very important part for us. Okay, so the current architecture is actually that you have Catapult, Spotlight, and Stats Perform, and then you also have some types of club input. That would be EMR, other types of input you might have about a player. It then goes into a cloud environment or data lake. It's not so interesting. And then it goes out to QIMA, which is then displaying the data. And then it goes to us, the data science team. We are, of course, the ones in charge of all the calculations, all the statistics, and setting the quality for that. And then it's currently going out to the national team, and it's also going out to the clubs. So we actually have 19 different customers within this. So if we look at this, the first thing is actually just looking at a player. So you have a player here. You then choose which team. He might have played for different teams. So you choose what team. You choose in what age. So he might have different ages because we all grow older. So you can choose him at the age of 25 or 26. You can choose the formation. You can choose the opposition. You can choose the competition. So that is defining first what is the data we're looking at. We then choose the metrics, which is either Opta, Spotlight, or Catapult. And then we choose a time frame up here, which is called the epoch system. And then we can do it relatively or we can do it absolute. So that is just defining what is the data we want to see from this player. Then down here we have the context, and that is what defines basically how he's doing in relation to the context. So here we can compare him to a player, to a team, to a position, to a foot, to whatever we want, right? And we believe that if you have this view of a player, you can answer almost any question you have to data. And I'll be happy to take up the challenge for anyone to show me that you cannot answer questions by having high granularity and high perspective and context. We then also have it for, again, one player where it can be many, many different days or months or whatever. And now we're just saying green and red. So green is the upper 15 percentile, red is the bottom, and it's not by bad or good, it's just by high or low. This allows you to see tendencies over time, to understand how is this player doing. Personally, one thing I don't like in football data is the spider charts, right? You see spider charts everywhere. But a spider chart is just showing you what is happening right now on an aggregated level. It's actually not very good data science. Is actually, I think it's a biased way of doing it, because you can tell any story from that, and you can choose any data you want from that. What you really need is to go in and look at the player, choose what you're looking at, choose the time frame, and then decide how are we comparing this player, and get a very, very complex picture of that to really understand the data. Then we also have many players, so now you can choose your whole team, and now you get the data from your whole team, and you can again compare your whole team to all players with the same height, or all players within a given position. So this is really, for example, if you're looking at Spotlight and you want to see the physical output of your team, it can be really, really nice to just see, okay, now we're Juventus, and we want to compare with AC Milan. How is their physical output over the last month, last season, last match week, or whatever? And you'll now get that picture. You can, of course, also compare with yourself, so you can look at tendencies over time within a given player's performance. Then we do the same with teams. Here we have Al-Taiwoon. Now we're choosing optometrics. What we want here is basically you choose a metric, and now you can go in and see where you ranked within the league, within that metric, given what you've chosen. Okay? So that's the basic system. Okay? And of course, I have some brilliant data guys who spend all their time having to figure out how do you actually combine all of this data. So that is the next question is, so, you know, from a football perspective, what I think is interesting is, let's say that we look at, so we know that teams that have high magnitudes of pressure doesn't necessarily have high magnitudes of high intensity runs, right? Why is that? Well, I know I can't ask questions, but that might be due to the fact that the clubs that have a lot of high intensity runs are not successful in their pressure, right? So you cannot just say, well, okay, a lot of pressure, a lot of high intensity runs. No, it's not the case. So that is the next phase for QIMA, is aligning such an event as high pressure to successful pressures. Because then you're starting to get the next level of that. Because now you can use the same system, but now you're deriving metrics saying high pressure intensities leading to retrieving the ball from the opponent within a given run compared to AC Milan or Sampdoria or some club, right? So that's the next stage where we can really, really deep, go really, really deep into this. But of course, what I'm doing now and what my team is doing is that we spend actually a lot of time going out to the clubs, showing them the system, and sitting down with the analyst, sitting down with the data science team, the coaches, and explaining this data to them. And in some ways, I think that taking, you know, the step back and just creating a really strong foundation for data analysis is something I see the need for many places in football, right? Because everyone is kind of thinking about Brentford and Brighton, right? They solve the data, right? They're defeating everyone else with their data strategies, right? So we jump to that, oh, let's create data that can unveil football for us. Let's use the XG model, let's use the XT model. But in reality, it's about understanding the basics of the data and how to analyze it before you jump to that next phase. So that was really, really important for us, that the system allowed us to do that. Okay, so now I'm just showing some of the analyses that we've done using the data and that we're also displaying to the clubs. So this is one of my favorite types of analyses. It's called a PCA. And one of the things that we realized within the league is that if you compare the Saudi Pro League to some other leagues, the Premier League, the Bundesliga, even the Danish Football League, you tend to have less defined tactical outputs or tactical identities. When you do a PCA, it allows you to kind of define, using the system, to define different types of styles of play. Okay, so you have Spotlight, you have also Opta, and now you can say these are the clubs that have high pressure, they have a lot of intense pressure runs. These are the clubs with less of that, a lot of low block and so forth. So you define the different areas of interest, and now you do the analysis, and then you can see how are the clubs defined in terms of style of play. So Al Ittihad, this was last season, they look like Man City, right? And Al Nassr is actually extremely close to how Liverpool plays. But actually, if you're in the middle, you're not so defined tactically, but you're very effective in how you do it in terms of attacking quality. But we want these clubs to spread out and become more defined so they can, through that, develop a strategy and develop a data strategy. Because if you understand that you're Al Fateh or Al Ali and you play high pressure, and actually Ali has a lot of Red Bull Leipzig staff, so they play this type of football. So if you play like that, that is what is telling you what to look for in the system when you're looking for players in the league you're interested in, or players within your own team that is not living up to how you play. So this is key to using the system, is understanding how do we actually play. So this can actually also be done on a player level where you take all players like this. So this is all central defenders last season, where we are now looking at on-ball progression on one side, and we're looking at defensive quality on another side. What you see is Laporte, an excellent defender in terms of build-up. He's not actually so excellent in terms of duels and physical presence, where we see Ibanez over there was extremely strong last season, and we then also color them by opta points, which is a type objective measure of performance, right? So this again, if you now look at your style of play and your players, now you can see whether your players are doing what you want within your style of play, where they are defined within these areas, right? So it's a way to match these two things together. Then we have the SPL Ramadan training report, because now we actually have access to all catapult training sessions. This is like, you know, the dream of all analysts, because now we can actually go in and see how much Ronaldo he was running last week. Of course, we cannot share that, but we can go in and look at tendencies. And of course, the Ramadan, as you all know, is a time where everyone is fasting. So the consensus within the scientific community actually was that that was a time with a lot less physical output within training sessions. Which makes sense, right? Because you're fasting all day. But what we figured out is that's actually not the case. Actually, during the Ramadan, the players are having a higher physical output. And so this is insights that we can now bring to the clubs and tell them about it, so they understand these insights from it. And our theory is that during the Ramadan, when you can break your fast, everyone is getting a great meal. So all your players are getting a great meal at 6 o'clock, and they're filling their bellies, and now they're training at 9, so it's the perfect time. So normally, you have 26 players. Do we know that all of them had a great meal? No, but we know during the Ramadan because they're all eating, because they haven't eaten for 12 hours. So these are some of the effects that come from this and having access to the data like this. We also use it on a more commercial level, so this is called the match week reports. So this is just completely automated by us through the QIMA and is then sent to Opta. So these are more commercial products that come out of QIMA, which we are also now getting aware of, that the football community and fans in general, they actually want to see more. They want to see XG, they want to see these data points. So we are starting to produce these types of reports that we then send out after each match week and gives insights to the match that was played. So what are the benefits? One of it is unifying all data sources. I always, I've been to so many clubs where this is a major issue. You have the academy, they use one type of data source. First team is using another one. Then they hire a new head of performance. He wants StatSport, he doesn't want Polar. So you constantly have all these different places where you're getting data. And by the way, OpenField is a platform by itself. Now you go and open the Opta Provision platform, and now you go and open the Spotlight platform, and none of that is unified. Through QIMA, everything is just one place. Then we have the idea that it's democratic. So since the gap between the clubs are so high, because a club like Al Hilal or Nasser has a lot more resources than the bottom, we're making sure that the bottom clubs at least have access to good level data analysis, right? That's making the difference slightly less. And then, of course, it gives us ability to create insights. And what I'm thinking is that if we look at this from the view of 10 years, then in 10 years' time, we'll have all training sessions, all matches, all Opta recorded 10 years from a league, and we can do a lot of analysis on that. We can do tons of research on that. There's going to be so many insights from that, especially since it's a league that's changing very, very rapidly, so we can see what is it actually that constitutes high performance in clubs. And yeah, so one of the things we can see now is actually that the better the staff and the more structured the staff is within a club, the better performance output they have physically in the league. It's also a very interesting insight, which actually gives us an argument to hire people like me. And then, of course, educational. We use this to educate the clubs, to educate the staff, and we can use this for style of play or performance-wise or tactical analysis. So that's the benefits of it. Yeah, so that's actually it, and I have 30 minutes left. So I will say that a tremendous thing going into this league is that you actually, you're part of developing something quite from scratch, and it gives a lot of opportunities. It gives a lot of headaches because you really have to think about how do we actually want to analyze football data? How do we want to go about this? But of course, you also need to have patience because it's not the Premier League yet. We'll see if that will happen one day, but it's an amazing task, an amazing opportunity to develop these things for the league. So, and thank you for inviting me.